You're watching American Stars. If you enjoy emotional celebrity stories, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Before the world learned the shocking details, before the headlines turned dark, and before the silence around his life became louder than the cheers that once shook arenas, something happened to Mike Tyson at 59 that nobody was prepared for. And as this story unfolds, you may find yourself asking, how can a man so powerful end up facing something so painfully human? In the quiet corners of his home, far from the sound of roaring stadiums and the flashing lights of cameras, Mike Tyson sits in a way most people have never seen him before. The man once known as the baddest man on the planet now carries a silence that feels heavier than any punch he ever threw. At 59, the tragedy surrounding Mike Tyson's life is not about violence, scandals, rivalry, or fame. Instead, it is something deeper, something that slowly grew over time, something that many never imagined this fierce champion would face. This story begins not in the ring, not in the gym, and not in the chaotic world of early fame, but in a quieter chapter, long after the world stopped paying attention, long after the cheers faded, long after the cameras turned away. This is the part of Mike Tyson's life that feels almost unreal because it is not loud, it is painfully silent. Chapter 1. The Shadow of Greatness. There was a time when Mike Tyson walked with an aura that demanded attention. At the age of 20, he became the youngest heavyweight champion in history. But at 59, the memories of those victorious nights feel like faded pictures stored in the back of a forgotten drawer. Tyson has said many times that he doesn't miss the glory, the fame, or the power. But as he sits quietly, looking back at the life he once lived, there is a sense that he misses something else, something much more personal. It is difficult for some people to imagine that a man who once inspired fear could later be haunted by fear of his own thoughts. Tyson often confessed that the person he used to be terrifies him, and as he entered his late 50s, this fear transformed into something heavier, something more heartbreaking. It became loneliness. Not loneliness in the typical sense of being physically alone, but loneliness of the mind, loneliness of reflection, loneliness of realizing that the world he once dominated has moved on. He has spoken about this openly, but even then, people only hear fragments. They hear quotes, they hear interviews, but they don't understand the depth behind those words. Chapter 2. The weight of time. Time is something that even the strongest men cannot defeat. At 59, Tyson's body carries the wear of years spent in a brutal sport. His joints ache, his muscles stiffen, his reflexes once fast enough to end fights in seconds now respond slower. The man who once trained for hours every day now wakes up with pains that linger longer than any memory of victory. He has said that aging is the toughest opponent he has ever faced. This opponent cannot be knocked out, cannot be outtrained, cannot be intimidated. And perhaps that is the first tragic layer to this chapter of his life, the realization that greatness does not protect anyone from growing old. Tyson, who once believed he was unstoppable, now sits in reflection, understanding that time always wins in the end. He speaks about death more than many people want to hear, and while some take it as dark humor or philosophical thought, those close to him know it comes from a place of deep emotional exhaustion. Chapter 3. A fight without an audience. One of the saddest truths about fame is that it disappears long before a person is ready to live without it. Tyson once lived a life where every room he walked into belonged to him, but now, he steps into rooms where younger fighters barely understand the magnitude of who he once was. Not out of disrespect, but because time has created new heroes. Tyson has said that he doesn't mind being forgotten, but the truth is, being forgotten hurts. Even for a legend, the world has moved on to new champions, new heavyweights, new stories. People still watch his old knockouts, still admire his career, still talk about his legacy, but they talk about it like history, not like something alive. Mike Tyson is alive, but his legacy, to many, feels like something from another era, and he feels that deeply. This is not about ego, it is about identity. When your entire life was built on being the most feared boxer on the planet, what happens when fear fades? What happens when the loudness of fame collapses into the quiet of aging? This quietness has become Tyson's unexpected opponent. A silent fight, a lonely fight, a fight with no audience. Chapter 4. The pain behind the smile. Mike Tyson smiles a lot today. He laughs, he jokes, he speaks calmly and gently. But behind that smile lies a lifetime of unresolved pain. Tyson has endured the loss of friends, mentors, and loved ones. He has endured the loss of his own daughter, a tragedy so devastating that he rarely speaks of it without pause. At 59, these memories hit harder than any punch he ever took. Pain does not weaken with time, it sinks deeper, and the older he gets, the more he reflects on the moments that shaped him, the good ones, the bad ones, and the ones that shattered him. He has said that love terrifies him more than fighting ever did. because losing people, losing connections, losing parts of himself has left scars deeper than anything the boxing ring ever gave him. And now, as he approaches 60, these thoughts follow him like shadows that never disappear. Chapter 5: A Body That Remembers. There is a quiet sadness in watching a great athlete grow old. Their body remembers everything, every injury, every hit, every training session. Mike Tyson's body tells the story of a man who pushed himself beyond limits. His hands hurt, his back hurts, his knees ache.
He cannot move the way he once did. And deep down, even though he speaks bravely about aging, he knows that the physical decline is permanent. He once said, "The person I used to be, I am scared of him. But the person I am now, sometimes I miss him." This contradiction is heartbreaking. He doesn't want to become the violent version of himself, but he misses the strength, the youth, the energy, the unstoppable presence. This emotional conflict is something few people understand, but it shapes every day of his life. Chapter 6: A Heart That Still Wants Peace. Despite the pain, despite the fear, despite the loneliness, Tyson wants peace. He meditates. He gardens. He sits quietly. He tries to heal himself emotionally, spiritually, physically. But peace is not something that arrives easily, especially when your entire life was built on chaos. Sometimes he talks about disappearing from the public eye completely, living quietly, silently, away from everything. Not because he hates the world, but because the world has taken so much from him already. At 59, the tragedy is not a single event. It is the accumulation of a lifetime of battles. Battles in the ring, battles outside the ring, battles inside the mind. And each battle left a scar that still hurts today. Chapter 7: The Truth Nobody Talks About. The saddest part of Tyson's story at 59 is not that he is aging, or that he is lonely, or that he is struggling with old pain. The saddest part is that people still see him as a myth, not a man. They see the knockout artist. They see the champion. They see the fighter. But they don't see the human being behind all that. A man who is tired. A man who is emotional. A man who has survived trauma, fame, poverty, violence, loss, addiction, and is still trying to understand himself. The tragedy is that the world made him a monster. But in his heart, he never wanted to be one. And now, as he approaches a new chapter of life, he is still trying to heal from the person the world forced him to become. Part 2, Chapter 8: The Echoes of Silence. Silence is something Mike Tyson never learned to live with in his early years. During his prime, there was noise everywhere. Crowds chanting his name, coaches shouting instructions, cameras clicking, reporters asking questions, opponents breathing heavy across the ring. Noise was the soundtrack of his existence. But at 59, the loudest sound in Tyson's life is silence. A silence that echoes through the halls of his home. A silence that grows louder whenever he sits alone. A silence that reminds him that life moves on whether you are ready or not. Some mornings, he wakes up before sunrise, sits outside, and listens to nothing but the wind. Not because he enjoys it, but because it's the only thing that keeps him connected to the present moment. In one interview, he said, "Silence scares me. It makes me think too much." And that is exactly the tragedy, because thinking forces him to confront memories he spent years trying to bury. Chapter 9: The Past That Refuses to Leave. No matter how far Mike Tyson walks into the future, his past follows him like a shadow that refuses to detach. It follows him in interviews. It follows him in documentaries. It follows him in the eyes of strangers who still look at him like a monster or a legend, but never like a human being. Tyson has said many times that he doesn't like remembering his younger self. Not because he regrets the fame, but because he regrets the person he had to become in order to survive. His childhood was filled with violence, bullying, loss, poverty, and chaos. He grew up without love. He grew up without guidance. He grew up fighting long before he ever entered a boxing ring. And these memories, buried deep inside him, rise to the surface more often as he ages. At 59, he realizes that his entire life was built on survival, not happiness. And surviving leaves scars that time cannot erase. Chapter 10: A Heart Full of Regret. Regret is one of the heaviest weights a man can carry. And Tyson carries more than most people know. He regrets the people he hurt. He regrets the trust he broke. He regrets the version of himself that used violence as communication. He regrets choosing anger over peace. He regrets the mistakes fame pushed him into. He regrets the relationships he lost because of his temper. And above all, he regrets the things he never said to people who can no longer hear them. At 59, regret is not just a memory. It is a companion. It sits beside him when he is quiet. It follows him when he walks. It whispers to him when he tries to sleep. And sometimes he admits that regret feels heavier than any championship belt he ever wore. Chapter 11: The Family He Feared to Love. One of the most heartbreaking truths about Tyson's life is that love never came naturally to him. He didn't grow up being loved. He didn't grow up learning love. He grew up in survival mode. So when he finally had a family of his own, love felt fragile, dangerous, and frightening. Tyson has said that he used to push people away when they got too close. Not because he wanted to, but because he didn't know how to accept love without expecting pain. His children see him as a gentle man, but Tyson worries that they will never understand the storms he survived to become the father he is today, and that fear breaks him quietly. At 59, he finally understands love, but now he feels the weight of all the years he spent misunderstanding it. Chapter 12: The Cost of Fame. Most people only see the glamorous side of fame: money, attention, power, endless opportunities. But fame also destroys. It destroys privacy. It destroys trust. It destroys peace. It destroys relationships. It destroys innocence. Tyson lived in a world where everyone wanted something from him: money, attention, connection, validation, or opportunity. Very few people ever wanted him. He once said, "I don't know who truly loves me.
I don't know who loves Mike Tyson, the man, and who loves the idea of me." That confusion stayed with him for years. Even today, at 59, it haunts him. He sometimes sits and wonders how differently his life might have turned out if fame had not consumed him so young. Fame made him a superstar, but it also made him lonely, and loneliness is one of the saddest consequences of success. Chapter 13: The Unseen Battles of the Mind. Tyson has openly shared his struggles with mental health, but the world rarely listens deeply. People focus on his quotes, not the pain behind them. Depression has followed him like a shadow. Anxiety has held him captive. Dark thoughts have crept into his mind during moments when he felt weakest. At 59, he still faces these internal battles. He tries to meditate, breathe, reflect, and ground himself, but trauma never disappears fully. He once said, "My mind is a dangerous place. It's not somewhere I like to go alone." This truth reveals more than any fight ever did. His toughest battles are not physical. They are emotional, internal, invisible, and that makes them even more heartbreaking. Chapter 1: For a World That Moved On. Tyson was a global icon. He was everywhere: TV shows, commercials, posters, billboards, news headlines. But as new generations rise, his era slowly becomes history rather than memory. Younger fans know him more for memes, podcasts, and stories than for the legend he truly was. And although he jokes about it, deep inside, it hurts, because the world he ruled has forgotten what it felt like to fear him, respect him, admire him, or cheer for him. He watches modern boxing and sees a world he no longer belongs to, not because he is incapable but because the sport has moved on. Time has replaced him with new stars, and he has no choice but to accept that. This quiet acceptance is one of the most tragic parts of his later life. Chapter 15: The Fighter Who nitrogen monoxide longer wants to fight. There was a time when fighting was the only language Tyson understood. Punches were his words, power was his expression, victory was his validation. But at 59, he no longer wants to fight. Not in the ring, not in life, not in his mind. He has said over and over, "I don't want to be that man anymore." And yet, the world often pushes him back into that role. People still want the old Tyson, the fierce Tyson, the unstoppable Tyson. But that Tyson is long gone. The tragedy is that the world still sees him as a fighter, even when he desperately wants to be seen as a human being. Chapter 16: A Man Tired of His Own Legend. It may sound strange, but Tyson is tired of being Mike Tyson. He is tired of the expectations, tired of the pressure, tired of the legacy, tired of the ghost of his younger self following him everywhere. At 59, he wants simplicity. He wants calmness. He wants freedom from the character the world created. But escaping a legend is impossible, especially when that legend is your own past.
This emotional conflict is what makes his life so deeply tragic. Chapter 17. The Fear of What Comes Next. Tyson speaks about mortality more than most people want to hear. He thinks about the end of life with a strange mixture of acceptance and fear. He has said things that shock people. But those words come from a place of exhaustion, not hopelessness. He fears leaving unfinished emotional chapters. He fears leaving his family unprepared. He fears dying with memories and regrets still trapped inside him. As he approaches 60, the fragility of life feels more real than ever. And knowing that time is running out creates a quiet sadness that never leaves him.